Good morning, gardening friends. Today is Sunday, July 16th, and it's definitely feeling like summer. It's 6:30 in the morning and it's already past 80 degrees and very sticky and humid. I haven't done a lot of gardening this week, but a lot has been happening in the garden. You can see my crepe myrtles are in full bloom now. That's the white crepe myrtle. I still have my plumeria, a couple of blossoms on the plumeria blooming. And, well, I guess we just missed it. My peach colored or yellow angel's trumpet is in flower. This is the problem with the crepe myrtles. They're a little messy. And you can blow those spent flowers off every day and they will drop back down again. But it is a pretty tree. Reminds me of snow. This angel's trumpet has had 5 or 6 flowers this week. This was the cutting I took last year. It's a white angel's trumpet. It normally doesn't have that brown edge. That's just because it's an older flower. And probably the heat of the day is burning it. I don't know if any of you have tried growing Venus flytraps. I did. And that is a 2-year-old Venus flytrap. It grew about it was 6 inches tall when I bought it. It bloomed. And then it got small and lost all its leaves. And earlier this spring it bloomed. And I was going to throw it out because it all but disappeared. But it looks like I have a microscopic one coming back. So I'm going to let it stay there and just keep it alive. My bananas are still growing hand over fist. One thing I did notice, I'm getting more subscribers, and every now and then I'll get comments about people liking the rooms that I have in my backyard. And they were all created, they were all planned and created for a reason. This line of trees and shrubs that stretches from the garage at the far end to my house over here, that was put in because when you come out my back door, in that general direction is my neighbor's back door. And every time I would open my back door at night before I had planted all of this, I would see a glaring spotlight. And so I planted these trees and shrubs in a line specifically to block that view. Likewise, I used to have a cluster of telephone poles in the back corner of my property. There's just one left now. They just took one out about 3 or 4 months ago. But that's the reason why I planted that palm there, because I tend to sit in one of these 2 chairs, either that one or the one I'm sitting in. And when I sit, I did not want a view of telephone poles, so I disguised them as best I could. And the other thing that I did is also when you step out the back door, along this fence line, I put that fence there specifically. Another street tees into the road by my property, right there. And as I would step out my back door years ago, I had a view all the way down that street. So at night there would be lights of cars coming up from the street. So basically, I planted in areas to improve the view that I had. I put this big archway here because at one time this garage was just a blank facade. I've since added the little porch to it on this side. Hopefully I'll get the side of it repaired. It's just so hot and sticky right now. I did one side last year. I'm hoping to do the other side this year and then paint it. But this was not a very pretty view prior to the porch being put in. And so I planted the archway of camellias to block that. So my garden evolved back here into rooms. But the whole reason for those rooms was to block views that I didn't like. So it's something to think about when you're starting a new garden. Are there views that you want to block, that you're not happy with? I watch a lot of gardening programs, and I always get a kick when I hear someone, especially when they're driving in a gator down their property, and they'll stop in the middle of the road and look and say, "Don't you just love the view from here?" And yes, it's a beautiful view, but think how much better it would be if there was a bench or if it was a window from your house instead of standing up on a gator in the middle of a road. So it is possible to have nice vistas. I have not cut the grass this week. We've been having rain every day pretty much. One thing I did do this week was fertilize all of my palms. Here you can see on this Pindo palm, it's got an inflorescence coming, and some fruit will follow. I used 20 pounds of fertilizer for all of my palms, which equates to about 5 bags. I buy specifically formulated palm fertilizer. You kind of need to do that for palms because they need micronutrients that only palms need, and so you kind of need a specially formulated fertilizer. And of course you follow the directions on the bag of fertilizer. It'll tell you how much. There you can see my Phoenix canariensis is getting a new top. That one I fertilized quite heavily, and I actually put in some magnesium sulfate, because magnesium is one of the things that's also known as Epsom salts. Magnesium is one of the things that palms need as a trace element. This angel's trumpet has grown. I don't see any flower buds on it yet, but it has grown. And my pecan is looking like a tree. It will actually fill the bill if it gets about another foot or so taller this year for a little tree over there. Miss Mimi is better. Actually, she's pretty much back to normal, which means she's getting, what's the right word? Stubborn again. And she doesn't want to come out. She doesn't like to come out in the heat and humidity anymore. She'll insist on coming out when it's 90 degrees outside, run outside, sharpen her nails on the back mat, and then rush right back in the house again. But her eye infection has totally cleared up, and she is back to her normal self. Got my fountains going. The turtle did come back this last week. I've decided to name him Gatto. He was in the front yard nibbling at my tomatoes, and so I brought him back here. He's getting used to me. The first time I picked him up, he peed and stayed in a shell. The second time I picked him up and brought him back here, he stuck his head out of his shell and was just looking where I was taking him. And now he's comfortable enough with me that as I picked him up to bring him into the backyard, he was kicking me with his back feet and waving his head about. So I've got a pet tortoise back here. That's his little water bowl. The water does disappear from that water bowl, so he lives back here somewhere. Here you can see my plumbago is starting to bloom. I kind of like to let the plumbago do its own thing and be a little wispy in the flower beds with all of the controlled growth of the boxwoods as a contrast. These potato vines have really taken over back here, which is good, and so far, knock on wood, no beetles have attacked them. Usually by this time the leaves look like lace and there's nothing left to them, and that's the reason I didn't have this growing here for the last 2 years. However, the original potatoes that I planted came back every year, and I did not plant these. They were in the ground for 2 years, not having been allowed to grow. Here you can see how it grows, sending up its shoots looking for some place to go. I'm going to cut them back and keep it kind of trained. Take a quick look around into the front yard. This tree is really the only satsuma tree that really is going to produce this year. You can see the satsumas here. This tree did not do well for the last couple of years. This is a west exposure, and it got real tall, and then a wind came up a couple of years ago and whipped it away from the house, and I cut it way back to probably, oh, I think it was about here, and figuring I didn't kill it, but I'll give it a chance for the trunks to thicken up. And sure enough, it thickened up, and now the winds don't seem to bother it. I don't like the fact that I have to duck to get underneath it now, but I'll wait till the satsumas produce and then I'll trim it up a little. And the exciting news here, which took up most of my week, was, ta-da! I got rid of my Kia Rio and wound up buying a Hyundai Kona 2023. I love it, love it, love it. It's the 5th car that I've owned ever, and it's one of the 2 that I really wanted, as opposed to buying what you could afford. It's a little smarter, it thinks it's a little smarter than I am, and I have Blue Link with it, so if someone ever steals it, I can have the car shut down on them, or at least they won't be able to restart it. You get that free when you purchase the car for 3 years. But it's kind of a nice feature until it starts texting you about how you're driving and the fact that you may have left your doors unlocked. Just what I need is a car to text me. Here, of course, it's kind of high summer right now. Not a lot happening in the potager other than, oh my gosh, the okra. I need to pick the okra. To be quite frank, I'm sick of okra. I need to clean this up. It looks like the dill has pretty much passed. Oh! Let me come back here and give you a shot of, well, actually, while we're in this direction, rather than whipping you around, my bananas in the front yard have done really well this year. They were cut, the 2 big ones were cut midway last year and came up from that stalk. But they also sent up 1, 2, 3, 4 other smaller ones, which is nice because it'd be nice to have a clump of bananas here rather than just a single or 2 bananas. So I'm very pleased with the fact that they formed a clump. But what I wanted to show you was this crepe myrtle in full bloom in my front yard. It was, of course, pollarded last fall, but it grew back. It is a beautiful color. This was here when I bought the house. I pruned it up and it had a beautiful trunk structure, But if you don't trim crepe myrtles, I mean, it would be about, well, I've been here now for 30 years. It'd probably be about 3 times the height of that. And I just didn't want that big of a tree in front of my house. Of course, as I've warned you before, crepe myrtles are a messy tree. Here you can see the sidewalk. When I was getting rid of my Kia this week, I donated it to Volunteers of America. If you haven't heard of that group, it's a great group. They will come and pick up your car for you as a donation, and they serve veterans. So it's a great organization. That was the second car that I donated to them rather than trying to sell it. And the fact that there was an ignition key problem is not an issue. They can either fix it or they'll sell it at auction, and they'll keep the proceeds. My cucumber really likes it there, and apparently no bugs and or animals like cucumbers, so it's doing well. The pelargoniums or geraniums, they're doing okay. I just didn't have the heart to kill them. Figs have not started turning black yet. Oh, I need to fill the bird bath. It hasn't rained all that much in the last couple of days, although it's been threatening. And there was exciting news on the street front. They started filling in some of the holes. There you can see my hydrangea. Limelight's doing well. And that crepe myrtle is the same color as the crepe myrtle, that big one I have, except this one has purplish leaves. I was just waiting for a walker to pass by so before I filmed out at the street, but they've started filling in. And I'm not sure, although it sure looks like it. It looks like they already broke the top off of that pipe in doing whatever they were doing to it. So hopefully, soon, they will finish up so that I could deal with what's left of the front of my property. In the meantime, sidewalk is being grown over. Oh well. It is what it is. But that's about it for today. Just wanted to do a quick video before the heat of the day kicks in. And I'll leave you with a view of my crepe myrtle. Have a good week.